Hey guys, I'm Josh Young, and
I'm John Dennehy.
yeah, we both have projects in El Zante where we are using Bitcoin to really empower the people in El Salvador and hopefully inspire other countries and communities to do the same.
Yeah, I know. I could only speak for myself, but I think that this would be shared that El Salvador is a great place to create positive examples, right? Like we have the power, the capability to show the world what's possible. If we could create powerful examples, that's its own way to scale. Like just the story of El Salvador, I think the first positive example was Bitcoin Beach, right? Bitcoin Beach gave the country the confidence to try something new. Like, hey, it worked for this town. Can it work on a larger scale, right?
For sure. The small community at Bitcoin Beach inspired the entire country to adopt Bitcoin. And I think that there is a huge opportunity for small communities of people doing things the right way to inspire larger communities, and then countries and organizations. So we actually, at New Story, I had launched a project with the organization where we focus on affordable housing, things that increase the speed of construction, decrease the cost of housing, all while maintaining the quality of homes being built. And part of that is creating a financial path to homeownership. So uh, there's where Bitcoin comes in. It's There is a huge opportunity in El Salvador where many of the families are unbanked to offer them an opportunity for to buy what I think is life's greatest asset, a home. And by being in El Zante at the forefront of Bitcoin circular economy innovation, uh, we're able to prove something to the world that this can be done, right? And using a mobile wallet instead of families having to take a bus for an hour to the bank, wait in line, and take an hour bus ride back, they can, from the comfort of their couch, pay a bill the same way you or I would, or put it on automatic repayments. And I think that's really spectacular, giving them a path to financial inclusion. I don't know, what's your experience? You focus on teaching families and or people about Bitcoin. What's been your experience?
Yeah, so it's probably maybe worthwhile to take a step back and
Yeah.
just say what Me from Rare Bitcoin is, and maybe also a new story if that's unclear. Although he kind of
Yeah.
got into it there, but so Me from Rare Bitcoin, we're just an education initiative. So we're an NGO nonprofit. Um, we are focused on getting people off of zero. So our target demographic are Salvadorians who are just starting to learn about Bitcoin, or who are just curious about Bitcoin, right? People, not people that already know a ton about it. That's other people could further their education. We're focused on people who are just starting that journey, and we think that's important for a number of things. One, again, El Salvador is a is a test bed. It's a test case, right? If we, I I know that a lot of people ask where the next country will be. I think that's the wrong question. I think the right question is, how do we make sure that El Salvador is successful? Because if El Salvador is successful, everywhere is next, right? And I think it's so important that we just put this focus on what's happening there for that reason, because it will echo, right? It's a nation of 6 million people, 6.5 million people, roughly the size of the population of South Carolina. Um, it's small enough that we could really put our thumb on the scale, that we could really make a difference. Like it doesn't take that much, and for us to make a difference there is going to echo around the world. So it's so important that we get it right there, that we create these positive precedents and examples. But But we find Bitcoin to be, for these people who are just starting their journey, to be very empowering for them, because one of the things that we talk about is that you don't need permission, right? That you could send it. People have relatives in other places and they want to send money. People, I mean, there's some, I know some Venezuelans and some Nicaraguans that have some trouble sending value back to their family where they come from. And, Bitcoin solves that problem for them. And it's an aha moment like, oh, so they can't stop this. Nobody could stop this. It's just me to my mother or me to my cousin or whatever. But also a lot of people in El Salvador don't have bank accounts. Um, I live in the capital, which is kind of the exception to the rule. I would say maybe most people there do, or a lot. Once you leave the capital, and things change a lot in that sense. Um, but that's another way that Bitcoin empowers people in El Salvador is it gives them, for the first time, the ability to save. So previous to Bitcoin, if people in El Salvador had spare money and they didn't have a way to save it, they would spend it, right? They would spend a little more on groceries that week or buy more clothes or whatever. There wasn't a great mechanism to save uh, for that 70% of the population. And now there is, right? Now there is, and that there's a number of people that I've met. I don't know if you've had similar experience there, but that have naturally come to the conclusion that dollars are for spending, Bitcoin is for saving. Like maybe they have a little bit of both. And first they take out of the dollar pile. Like if they have expenses, first they take out of their dollar pile, and then if they have to, they take out of their Bitcoin pile. And I've seen people come to that conclusion totally on their own, which is just really interesting. Bitcoin is its own teacher.
Yeah, no doubt. Early on, they noticed. So Strike made a huge investment into El Zante pretty early on, and early on they noticed that people were switching from USD to Bitcoin back and forth via the Lightning Network. Um, Strike took the risk on Bitcoin so that families could hold USD, but on Bitcoin. Um, and they were like, what's going on? Why do people keep switching back and forth? And they noticed that kids had figured out that they could make the money go up or down by they were trading.
Yeah.
Which I think is just incredible, giving people an opportunity. That's all a lot of people need is an opportunity. They can figure out the rest themselves by uh, doing the thing, right? And I just think that's the coolest thing. Since I've been there 2 years ago was my first time ever to El Salvador. Just 2 years, I've seen such a mindset shift from mostly the teenagers to young adults who are now seeing opportunities right in front of their eyes growing. They have mentors now who are doing incredible things. And now they're wondering, how can we make a difference in the world? Like, which opportunities can I turn into successes for me and for my family? We have a 17-year-old kid, Ismael, who is paying for his home for him and his mom um, with Bitcoin. He got a job, and it's just really cool to see that opportunity where before there's just not even the thought that that's possible. Like people don't even think like having a home is such a dream. I mean, it's becoming a dream for us in America too, but especially there when you don't have a means of saving or getting a loan. Um, a high quality home just isn't something where you own the land title, stuff like that. It's just really cool to see everybody dream. And like, I don't think that would be possible if Bitcoin didn't make its way to El Salvador. And the optimism for the whole country is actually, I keep saying cool, but I just think it's really cool. It's moving. Um, And that's thanks to an initiative from a couple of leaders, like a handful of people who wanted to take a risk. They were willing to be first, maybe be called silly for a couple of years. And now uh, most Bitcoin companies want a stake in El Salvador, so there's more jobs. Really a huge benefit to the country and to people willing to try. And now there's just been so much growth there that I think has been really incredible, and I think that can be replicated in a lot of places.
Can I ask a quick question around that?
Yeah.
So say Bitcoin created this opportunity to own a home, but he got a job. So is he earning dollars and converting to Bitcoin? Like what is changing? How did Bitcoin allow the house? I mean, it sounds to me like the job would create the opportunity.
Yeah.
What's really occurring to make that switch?
Yeah. So for starters, we're only in El Zante because we were inspired by the Bitcoin Beach team, and I read a Forbes article 2 years ago that talked about, oh, El Salvador's president is adopting Bitcoin because this small community have a positive outlook on Bitcoin's circular economy, right? And that made me look into researching, well, because I'm obsessed with housing. Like that's my thing. So every time I see something in the news, I'm thinking, okay, how can this lead to more people in safe homes? And the research showed that so many families in Latin America in general don't have bank accounts. So they don't qualify for loans. But using Bitcoin, you can, and the Lightning Network, we use the Lightning Network. Families can, all they need is a mobile phone to be able to send and receive payments, right? And we're a nonprofit, so we also have the benefit of being able to try something that doesn't necessarily turn a profit. So we are charging families $60 a month over a long term period, 10 to 15 years. They're allowed to pay more, they can pay off their house sooner. But at the end of it, they own the title to the land and to the home that is built to last generations. So, I mean, for that's just for starters. We are only there because read an article that mentioned Del Zante and their willingness to try Bitcoin. And then the second thing is the Lightning Network making it super easy and efficient for people to send and receive payments. So we have an Bit Refill is actually what we're using. They set up a really awesome bill payments, and that's their initiative right now is making bills widely available to be paid with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. And they families who aren't used to even seeing receipts, like usually it's cash, like I hand you cash and I walk away with no proof of payment, now get a system that looks a lot like when I pay my phone bill, right? Or so it's just a huge opportunity for people to not get taken advantage of, which happens a lot in developing world countries and banks. And it gives us an opportunity to do something via the Lightning Network that isn't scalable using a traditional financial banking system at basically to do it without increasing the cost of operations for us.
And maybe to you know further some of those points and help address that question as well from my perspective. Uh, I think it's a really important innovation of Bitcoin, which is felt more in a place like El Salvador than it is in a place like South Carolina, is that Bitcoin doesn't care. Bitcoin treats everyone the same. So in this example, he's talking about people have access to get in a loan to buy a house that wouldn't have before because the system is built around people that have access to bank accounts, right? And Bitcoin doesn't care. It doesn't care where you were born. It doesn't care how old you are. It doesn't care, who you voted for in the last election. It doesn't care if you have a bank account or not. Like it puts people on a more level playing field, because I think the world that we live in, there's a lot of walls that are built, right? A lot of restrictions. You could only do X if you have Y, right? In this case with houses, X is you could only own a house if you have a bank account, right? So that just removes that and puts us all on a more equal playing field, which I think that is important everywhere, and I'm excited about the potential for that everywhere. But for me, it's a bit more obvious in a place like El Salvador than it is in other places. Uh, do we have any more questions or?
For you, what's for your education, I guess, movement? What's the ages that you're starting to teach these kids?
Yeah, so we're pretty broad. We're pretty specific in Bitcoin education for Salvadorians starting their journey, but beyond that, it's pretty broad. So we have intro classes that are just a one-off 90-minute, and they're open to the public. They're free, so anybody could come to that. There's a very wide age range. We don't care, right? You could be 14 years old. You could be 85 years old. And we get it all. We also have uh, a Bitcoin diploma, which is a 10-week program that we have someone in the audience here who helped with the curriculum, Robert back there. So this book it's a 10-week course. So same idea. It's people that start at zero, basically at the beginning of their journey. With this, by the end of 10 weeks, then they're a lot more advanced than the person that took the 90-minute class, right? But we started using it in a couple of public high schools. So towards the end of high school, so 16 years old, 17 years old, that was the age range. But I think it's actually quite ambitious for that age group. Like they do great with it, but any adult would also benefit a great deal from that. And in fact, starting next week, we're going to start to offer it with the support of a couple of mayors in different parts of the country to teach it out of various city halls. And that will be just open to the local population that's in that town. So there's not really an age group. We do think that age group, like 16, 17-year-olds, are a strategic demographic in that they tend to be natural teachers. So the way the final exam works for that course is they have to restore a wallet from seed on a new device, and so they'll have two phones in front of them. They'll have to restore a wallet from seed on one device and send the contents that they restored to the first one, which is their own, so they get to keep that. Find it on the blockchain, explain what's happening, when it can be considered secure, and as a bonus, teach it to someone else, right? Teach that process, walk someone else through that process. And it's really amazing to watch these kids do it because they want to. Like at the last graduation that we had, which was just a couple of weeks ago, as people were going through that process, some of them were finished, some weren't, and I went across the school to the bathroom, and outside the bathroom there was a group of girls, like students at the school. Some of them we give them a T-shirt when they graduate, right? So some of them had that T-shirt on, so they had passed. But there were other people that were just students at the school. They were in different classes, different ages, whatever. And there were six of them, so 3 with the T-shirt, 3 without. And the 3 without were like, "Oh my gosh, that's so cool! Like, how does this work? What?" And they were just very excitedly explaining what Bitcoin was, And I think at that age, they're in a way natural teachers. Like the idea is that they go home and they talk to their parents, their younger brother, or their grandmother. So we do teach everyone, but I think that some demographics have a, I don't know what the word would be, but like an are not, that they're able to pass it on to more than others. And I think that high school is a demographic that people naturally spread that information. They're also open to it, right? They don't have to unlearn anything. We teach them the first 3 weeks in that. It's a 10-week course. The first 3 weeks is financial literacy, essentially. It's like, how have we arrived at this point? What is money? And they're open to it. You know, they get it easier than people who have entrenched themselves in a different sort of world for 50 years, you know. So we teach everyone, but I think that high school students are going to be really important in helping speed the education to everyone.
I got another question, if no one else. How many houses have you built, and what is the, I guess, the typical size and, you know, maybe the cost of one of your houses?
So, what primed us to do the work in El Zante is we actually have already we built houses in El Salvador previously. So we use all local partners and all local materials. I hesitate to give an exact number. We say $10,000 per home. That doesn't include the land cost because it's usually granted by the municipality, and some of the labor is subsidized as well by the government. But for the actual house, only $10,000, which is part of the reason we're motivated to. Our mission is to pioneer solutions that end global homelessness. So we're focused on that innovation aspect and proving to the world that it works, inspiring other people to get involved, start their own companies. So doing that in a developing country is much easier than in the U.S. And we can do it at scale for a much lower cost with the same quality of homes. And the need is everywhere for housing. So the $10,000 per home, a little over 1,000 homes, 8 as a pilot project in El Zante. We are finishing up 250. That should be done by the end of the year in El Zante, which will house like a quarter of the population in the small town, which is really exciting. I love the country and I love the people in El Zante, so I'm just really excited about it.
Yeah. And I'll second that. I think El Salvador, with projects like that and others, is just a really exciting place now because it's a place where more seems possible, where the all the restrictions of the world don't seem to apply as much. There's just more hope. There's more experimentation. Can we do this better? Can we do this differently? And I'm just so motivated for El Salvador to be a positive example for the world, for transformation, for change, for a better future.
Yeah, I will say we're pretty gushy about El Salvador, but I've never been a part of more helpful elected officials than in El Salvador. The Ministry of Housing, the economic minister, people are willing. If you come to them with a solution, they're willing to listen. They have time to try. They really want to make an impact for the betterment of their people. And that's been really encouraging. And part of the reason I think El Salvador has maintained a level of attractiveness towards people willing to try work there. So I'm sure other countries have, the same ability, right? And I haven't experienced it yet.
I think
We can take one more question if someone has it. Otherwise, we'll close.
I had a real quick one. Do you think that high school would also be the appropriate age to start educating in America to also, like the same kind of idea, they're the most likely ones to just naturally move that information, immerse it around them?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's such a great age because you need to understand the way that the financial system works. You need some baseline, right? You can't start with a 6-year-old, right? You need some baseline, someone that's maybe had their first job or has some experience with buying, spending money, um, but aren't yet entrenched, so they have to unlearn things. So I think that's really the sweet spot where people are capable of understanding, and they're also very open to anything, really, to any new idea. So I think it would be great to have that, and in fact, we hope to have that diploma program here in the United States and South Carolina soon.
And for the record, I think there needs to be financial literacy programs in the U.S. beyond just Bitcoin. Like
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
like a starting block. Like, yes, love Bitcoin. I think it is the finance of the future. I think that includes Bitcoin. But we'd be starting at zero in terms of putting it in high school curriculum. So any level is better than nothing.
All right. Thank you, everybody.